which pot to use when making alcatra, a dessert named for a queen, and why bulls are revered in Terceira. This week, we're in the Azores of Portugal.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. This is where we try dishes from every corner of the earth at destinationeatdrink.com and here on the Destination Eat Drink podcast. My guest this week is Maria Lawton, host and producer of Maria's Portuguese Table on PBS. But first, if you've enjoyed Destination Eat Drink, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and rate and review us on your podcast app. Thank you very, very much. Maria Lawton was on the show last week talking about the Portuguese people who came to southeastern Massachusetts and settled in New Bedford and Fall River. And if you haven't heard that episode, you can get it at radiomisfits.com/DED236. This week, Maria's back talking about the new season of her show, Maria's Portuguese Table, and the cuisine of the island of Terceira in the Azores. Terceira is about 1,000 miles from mainland Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean. It's part of the Azorean island chain formed by volcanic eruptions hundreds of thousands of years ago. And Maria tells me about the culture of ceramics in Terceira, including the unique wine glasses made there and a unique cooking vessel for a dish called alcatra. But first, Maria tells me about being a judge for the pastel de nata throwdown. Okay, I'm starving for some pastel de nata, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Maria Lawton, welcome back to Destination Eat Drink. I had you on the show last week. We were talking a lot about New Bedford, Massachusetts, which has this vibrant Portuguese community. We talked about the Feast of the Blessed Sacrament. We talked about having bacalhau breast. We talked all kinds of cool stuff. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the places where you were in this season 2 of your show, Maria's Portuguese Table. So thanks for coming back on the show this week.
Oh, thanks for having me back. I knew when we sat down last week, I'm like, okay, how can I talk about everything in just one episode? And of course, it doesn't happen that way,
Impossible.
does it? It's impossible. With the two of us together, we can talk forever. So this is impossible, especially when there's so much to say. You know, it really is. So thank you for having me back again.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the Azores, but before we get to the Azores, I follow you on social media. And it's always fun to see what you're up to, what you're cooking, where you're going, what you're doing. And recently you posted about something that just really tickled my fancy. And that is the New Bedford Fall River Pastel de Nata Throwdown, which I just think is an awesome freaking idea. I love this. But before we get started, I just want to tell folks, pastel de nata is the famous custard tart that you get when you come to Lisbon. It's all over Portugal. It's at any Portuguese bakery in the United States, but it started in Lisbon. It's the famous custard tart. It's absolutely delicious. And then they recently had a competition between the two cities that have the strong Portuguese culture, New Bedford and Fall River, Massachusetts. There's the setup. Tell me a little bit about it, Maria.
Well, what's funny is I had an email sent to me, and it was a woman, Pam Schwartz, and she says, I had the New Bedford food tours she has here in New Bedford, and she goes, I teamed up with my friend, Patty in Fall River, and we've come up with this idea of doing a throwdown, a nata throwdown, and would you be interested in in being part of this? And I'm thinking, okay, a nata throwdown. Number one, what an amazing idea. That's right. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, I got to talk to this woman. So she's like, if you're interested, give me a call. This is my number. So I give her a call. And she starts telling me, she's like, we have all of these, and I think we need to, we've got these, bakeries in Fall River that have agreed. We've got these bakeries in New Bedford. We need people to go to these bakeries and try them out. Would you be able to do that and kind of show people, this is what you need to do, folks, go into bakery, do this, do that, get your card stamped and I'm like, you want me to go to bakeries and try out natas? And so she's like, yes. And I'm like, where do I sign up?
Right.
Like, yes. And yes.
No hesitation.
It's just now I have, to work out extra pounds, but it was a job that I needed to do. I felt I needed to do. So, it was the neatest thing. So what's funny, again, like anything, which is really funny, is that they approached pretty much all the Portuguese bakeries, and a lot of them went, no, I don't want to. No, don't want to do this. And others were like, yeah, this is fun. And so in New Bedford, there were only 3 bakeries that agreed to be part of the competition. So it was Sunrise, it was Goulart Square, and it was, oh my goodness, I'm going to Economy Bakery. That's it, Economy Bakery in the North End. So I started with those 3 because I figured, okay, I've got to start first, New Bedford. I've got to do those 3. So of course I'd go in, and they followed me with a camera. As I went in, and I had to be careful because I couldn't go, oh my God, this is the best, because I couldn't do that. Because I had to be, everyone has different tastes. I couldn't just say this is my favorite and go from there. It has to be, it's a secret thing. You vote in secret. And so I got to do that. So of course, the first one I go to, I'm like biting into it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. Oh my God. I'm like, really good. And, because there's 3 things that you've got to look for in a nata. You've got to look for the outside crunch, the shell that it's in. It's a puff pastry crust. So when you bite into it, it's got to go, you've got to have that crunch. The inside has to be nice and creamy, and the texture of it, and the very top of the custard part has to have caramelization. Got to be caramelized on that top. So it's those 3 things that make a pastel de nata. So, and we have to call it a pastel de nata because you cannot call it a pastel de Belém because they're the original. There's only one that can only be called that, and that is in Belém. The rest can be called pastels de nata, but it's the derivative of that. I just found that not too long ago. It was like, oh, you can't call it pastel de Belém because that is only in that one place.
It's like a protected origin type thing. Just like a champagne and sparkling wine type of idea.
You got it. So of course I had the 3 in New Bedford that I did. And then when I got to Fall River, I needed to do those there. And we had six bakeries in Fall River. And I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do all these? And it's a sacrifice that I need to make, And so I called my friends, the Portuguese kids, Brian and Derek, who are in Fall River. And I said, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods. And I'm going to be tasting pastels de nata and seeing who has the best ones in Fall River and, competing against New Bedford. And so they're like, New Bedford's not going to win. It's Fall River. So there's a lot of trash talk going on. And so I show up at Barcelo's, one of the bakeries that we filmed at. Again, I had the camera following me, and they show up with the mayor of Fall River. Oh, and they're telling the mayor and them are going, so why is New Bedford pastels de nata not as great as Fall River? And I'm like, no, I am not going to go there. No, we've got to stay even Steven. So we went to a few of them. I couldn't do all 6. I'm like, So after the third one, I'm like, I can't, guys. I can't. I can only, and I was only taking a bite. I couldn't have a whole nata all the time. This is not going to work. And so we went to Cafe Europa. That was the other one. And we went to Lendy's. I had never heard of that bakery before. So there were bakeries that I went into that I hadn't gone before in, which was really great. And that was the key thing. We wanted, number one, it was a fantastic idea. And I even said that to the two women, Pam and Patty, and said to them, I don't know who came up with this idea from the two of you, but whoever did it, genius. Because it's so good to have a different take on something so fun, so new, and it's right there in front of you. You know, you've got all these wonderful things, but you want people to go out to the different bakeries and try out the different desserts. And while you're there, you know, try out the coffees and try out, you know, whatever. And there was one bakery I went into and I kept going, wow, wow, wow. Because everything was so good. It was the crunch. It was this, it was that. Then they came out with coffees, the made lates. They're like, oh, have this. And then they come out with, and we have a frap we made from natas. And I'm like, what? You have a frap, which is ice cream, you know, cold, whatever, with natas in it? I'm like, no. And they're like, yeah, here you go, taste it. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go into a sugar coma pretty soon because it was, yeah, it was incredible. And it was such a fun thing to do. And they just announced on the 15th, who won, which is great. And so it was Goulart Square in New Bedford that won number one for their natas from the two places. And number two was the Europa or Cafe Europa in Fall River. So it was a close between those two, but those are the two that the majority of people agreed were the best ones. So it was so much fun. It was so much fun. And so of course people now are like, well, who has the best coffee? Oh, now
there you go.
Who has the best Portuguese steaks? I'm like, oh my goodness, I am not doing that. I'm not doing that.
They're opening up all these cans of worms now. These competitions.
Yes. So I can see more happening, but I think Maria is I will pass the baton on to someone else.
You're going to retire. That's good.
Retire.
Well, when you come to mainland Portugal, when you come to Lisbon, I'll take you to some of my favorite places, Maria, and
I can't wait.
We can try the pastel de natas there, and you can decide which is your favorite.
What's my favorite?
I love, and I've heard some people give grief to these kinds of pastel de natas, but I love the mini pastel de nata, and I'll tell you why. First of all, they're like 2 bites, 1 bite if you're feeling, frisky. But I like the fact with the mini pastel de nata, you get a higher ratio of crust to custard. And for me, it's all about the crust. I love the custard on the inside, but I really love that phyllo dough crust that you get. So you get more of that when you have the mini pastel de nata. And that's why I personally love the minis.
Interesting. Here, and the other thing that people are doing a lot of also is you've got your traditional pastel de nata, but then they put like passion fruit on top, or they put, Nutella on top, or they put this on top. And, if you like that, good for you. That's, whatever. But I'll take the original, without any toppings any day. And like you, I agree. It's like that crunch has got to be there. If that crunch isn't there, okay, it's either old, they made it yesterday and you're getting it today, or, you cannot beat a fresh nata. And in some of the bakeries that I went to, they had just come out of the oven.
That's what you want.
And
Get
that's
them
what you
fresh
want.
Out of the oven. And here in Portugal, I found out that you can Like you can point to the specific one that you want and it's not considered rude. I mean, I would be reluctant to do that in the United States if I went into a bakery and said, no, I don't want that one. I want that one. But here in Portugal, it's like expected. And you'll see people in some of these pastelerias hanging back, waiting for the new ones to come out of the oven. And they're like, okay, now we'll get in line. Now we'll go and we'll order one, because when it's warm, the crust is warm, but also that inside, the custard is warm. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it right now.
It's creamier. It's actually creamier that way, which is incredible. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I won't say which bakery I had this, but I bit into it. I picked it up and I'm like, okay, this feels cold. And then I bit into it. It was like they had taken it out of the refrigerator. And I'm like, who the heck serves this? It was, again, I will not share that, but, it was like, no, this is not how it should be served. You don't even serve that. It's gotta be, it's gotta be warm. It's gotta be warm.
Because then the custard is, when it's out of the oven, the custard is almost runny. And if it's been sitting around for a while, it gets more gelatinous. And I can't imagine if it was cold, if it was sitting in the refrigerator, it'd be even more gelatinous. And that's it's just not as good that way.
No, it's wrong. It's just so wrong.
We're going to put them in pastel and out of jail.
Yes, they're in the corner with the dunce cap.
So, Maria, let's go to the Azores now. In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, there's this set of islands called the Azores, which is an official Portuguese territory. This is where your family is from. Lots of folks from who live in the United States can trace their Portuguese heritage back to the Azores. And you did an episode in Terceira.
Yes.
And what I found really interesting, that I've also found interesting throughout Portugal, is you'll find these certain areas where ceramics are really a vital part of the local culture. And in Terceira, there's a strong culture of ceramics and pottery. Yes. You even got to make a pot while you were there. What was that like?
Oh my goodness, that was such an amazing, amazing experience. Number one, I never thought I was going to be making a pot. I knew, because when we were in Terceira, the food I knew I wanted to make when I was there was the alcatra, as well as duna melias. So the alcatra is meat that is cooked low and slow in a clay vessel. And so I knew I wanted to see how these vessels were made. So, and someone had said, oh, there's, this gentleman who is in the village. He's there. I hadn't even spoken to him before I got there. It was literally by divine intervention kind of thing. And they said, oh, he's there. His name is Ricardo. You can talk to him, see if he'll let you film him making a pot or, whatever. So I was like, great. So I show up, and of course, it's not just me that shows up. It's me and 6 men. It's
Maria's
just
crew.
Yeah. And, and they've got cameras and they've got, mics and they've got this and they got that and all that stuff. And so I show up and hi, Snu Ricardo, I'm Maria Lawton. This is what I'm doing, blah, 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 whatever, the whole bit. And he's like, yeah, this is great. Thank you. And so I learned more about his history and how it all came together and what he does. And so it came from learning about his history. Down to, one of the ovens that he has, which is built just like Roman ovens were made, where it's like if you take one stone out, the whole oven falls kind of thing. It is just the most amazing oven I've ever seen. And that he still, once or twice a year uses that oven and can hold over 1,000 or so many pieces just in that one oven, which is incredible. And then down to feeling the clay that the dirt, the clay that he uses to making everything in his shop. And one of the clay, or the mother of all clays, comes from the island of Santa Maria. That is the mother clay. And it is over, if I'm not mistaken, 9 million years old. And so it is something where I'm like, okay, my mother's side of the family came from Santa Maria. They came originally from the mainland and then they went to Santa Maria because that was the first island to be inhabited before they went to San Miguel. So I'm like, okay, if I touch this, it's almost like I'm touching their soil that they were in before. You know what I mean? It was really beautiful, and it felt so beautiful. And then he was like, well, do you want to make one? And I'm like, do I want to make what? And he goes, well, I can teach you how to make one. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to make it. I've never worked with clay before. I've never worked. He's like, oh, it's easy with the wheel. Here's the wheel. And of course he makes something and it's like in a blink of an eye. He goes, see, it's easy. This is it. This is what you can do. And he's like, oh, okay. So he gets me all, with the apron, all of that stuff up. And of course I'm wearing white. I don't know why I wore white that day, but I wore white. And so I'm like, okay, my white is going out the window. I'm going to get, dirty. And he's like, okay, you've got to knead the clay first. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy because I saw him kneading it. And I'm like, oh, this is like dough. You knead the dough like for bread. This is going to be it. Oh my goodness. You've got to have a strength, upper body strength like you would not believe to work that clay. And then, you throw it on the wheel, and I made a small vessel. I made it. It's not the big alcatra pot, but I made a smaller version of the alcatra pot. But I did it. And I was so proud of it. And then he's like, well, this got to cure, and then I've got to heat it, and I've got to do this up to it. And he's like, but when you come back, are you ever going to come back? And I'm like, I am coming back. He goes, it will be waiting for you. So I need to go back.
You got to get that pot, Maria.
I got to get that pot I made. Oh, it was so beautiful. And of course, hearing his story and how he's, what he's done and what he's still doing. And there are only a very few people on that island that are making things by hand. And this is the same thing when I go to different islands, like when we were in, there's always like somebody who's like last person or one of 3 people that are making it on the island, and no one else is making it and no one else is doing it. It's like, oh my goodness, guys, do you see what's happening here? Somebody's got to learn how to do this. We've got to continue these traditions, because once these people are gone, it's lost. It goes with them. And that is part of our culture. It is part of our history. It's part of our culture. It's, this is what we used in our cooking, in our serving of foods, in all of that. And he made me, or he gave me, I should say, because he had made it before, these small cups. He says, I've got cups that I've made. That was the traditional way of drinking wine. You didn't use it in a glass. You drank it from this. And I had never seen it before. I had never seen it before. And he said, but when you drink wine in this, he said, it is the way our ancestors would drink their wine, is in this clay vessel. And he gave one, he made it, and he gave one to me and my husband. So we have 2 of them.
Nice.
We had red wine in it the other day. It was like, I'm like, okay, I'm drinking it. It's like this small bowl with a little spout in it that you kind of, and it has almost like 2 little handles that you would put your 2 hands holding it, and the little spout would be, turning it towards you so the wine pours in and pours into your mouth that way. And it is, yeah, it was like, I'm like, okay, I know my ancestors drank out of this.
That design sounds amazing to me, Maria, because as
Yes.
I'm imagining this in my head, I'm thinking with that little spout, maybe part of what it's doing is aerating the wine a little bit as it goes into your mouth, so you
That's
get
exactly it.
a more of a flavor. It's
That's
genius in a way, isn't it?
it's exactly it. It's exactly it. They didn't know it at that time, but they were
Right.
doing that. Yes. Or maybe they
Right.
did. Or maybe
Well,
they did.
sure.
You know? Maybe not. But it is yeah, so it was a beautiful experience with him, and I can't wait for people to see it. It really was beautiful.
Talk a little bit about this dish, the alcatra that you mentioned.
So the alcatra, which has Moorish influences, to talk about history in our food. We had a lot of Moorish Jews. We had the Moors that came into Portugal, leaving, all the persecution that they were going through, coming into the mainland, and they were there and influenced so much in the mainland. So much was influenced by them, and the Moorish people, and then including our tiles that we azulejos that we have. There's just so much, and then what happened is they would use, like, if you go to Morocco, whatever, they have tangines. And so what they did when they came to Portugal, and then eventually they left there and the mainland and went to the Azores, they brought along, and people who left brought along these vessels. And so it is a clay vessel that does not have a top like a tangine, but it is in a clay pot. And you would make layers of cuts of beef that are usually not the most tender. But because you're layering it with, with onions and bay leaves and peppercorns and wine and garlic, and it's just like layer upon layer, and the meats are laid up on top of each other. And at the end, you add wine to it, and you cover it up. And they covered it up. Now they cover it up with foil. Other times, they wouldn't. They would just leave it that way. Maybe put up something to cover it, but it was not another vessel of sort. And you let it just cook low and slow. And then when it's done, the meat is just so tender, and it is so delicious. And everything that's in that pot, that vessel, it just permeates inside of that meat, and it's just incredible. And I knew I had made it here at home one time, because I have people that I know from Terceira who go, "Oh, it's easy. You can do this." And you need to get the clay pot. And the first time I bought the clay pot, I didn't season it long enough. And so you learn by mistake. So of course I put it in the oven and it cracked.
Oh no.
Yeah. And that's what can happen. So I go back to the Portuguese store that I bought the vessel in, and I said, "It's my fault. I know I didn't season it. I should have seasoned it longer than I did." And so was soaking it in water. And because you need to soak it in water for a good couple of days. And I soaked it for one day thinking it was enough, and it wasn't. So they said, "Oh, we have black clay here that comes from the mainland. And the black clay does not need to be seasoned. So you can use that to make your alcatra." And I went, "Oh, okay." So I now have a black clay that comes from the mainland to make the alcatra. So of course I take pictures of it, I make it, whatever. I got heck from everyone in Terceira saying, "You're not from Terceira, number one. You do not cook it in a black pot. That's from the mainland." And you want to say to them, "Well, where do you think we came from? Well, where do you think this came from? This did not,
right.
It did not pop out of the island when the island came up from the Atlantic. This is not, So, but I get it because, it is very dear to them, and it is like the dish that they make there. And they do the alcatra of beef, they do with chicken, they do with fish, they do They even make in those pots, they even make rice pudding. They make, I mean, like they're doing everything in those pots. So I get it. And I don't want to offend anyone. So I needed to make sure that when I was in Terceira, that I would learn from a home cook. And that's what I did. And her name was Filomena Carvalho. And she opened her home to me, which was just beautiful and incredible. And she taught me how to make the alcatra dish that is in their village. So every village has their own little take of spices and of like little take of here and there of what they do. But the end result is still all the same, but some people season it with one way, someone season it with extra this, someone seasons it with extra that. So she taught me how she does it from her village, her husband's village. So I was like, okay. And so we did it. And of course, you serve it with sweetbread. That is the traditional way. You eat it with massa sovada, fondos. So we had it with that. And it was incredible, just incredible. And then it was her sister-in-law that was there. And it's her sister-in-law who makes the dona melias. And the dona melias is also a specialty just of that island, even though they make it everywhere now, but it is a specialty of that island because the last king and queen, the last queen of Portugal was Dona Amélia. She was our last queen. And so when the king and the queen came to visit and did their tour of the Azores, when they were in Terceira, the women of Terceira decided they were going to make a dessert specifically or specially for her with her name. And they'd be calling it the Dona Amélia. And so there's history on that cupcake as well. And so she had, it was her recipe, but it was Filomena who taught it to me on camera because the sister-in-law was too shy. She didn't want to be on camera.
Oh,
but it is,
wow.
Yeah, it is her. She was there, but in the background, making sure
right.
that we were doing everything right. But
I'm not coming on camera, but I'm going to make sure.
Yes. And there were a couple of times she would go, no, it's not that way. And we were like, okay, we got to stop filming because we can't have someone going, no.
Oh my God.
That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, it's brilliant. I love it. What exactly is the Dona Amélia?
The Dona Amélia is almost like how can I explain it? It takes molasses, it takes corn flour. It is again something where it's a very Portuguese thing because again we had the sugarcane plantations and all that, and we had the cana, the molasses made from our sugarcane, and that is in there. It is spices that are of Portuguese that we had from the spice trade. So there's cinnamon, there is nutmeg, there is clove, there's like all of these other, even pepper. There's even pepper in it too, which is really kind of neat. And it creates this dessert, which is so delicious. And my husband called it almost like a gingerbread. It was very similar to a gingerbread for him.
And because of all the spices.
Because of all the spices, exactly. And I'm like, no, this is not gingerbread. And he's like, Maria, smell it. It smells like gingerbread. I said, it's not gingerbread. So and then some people would put a couple or one or two raisins in it. Not everybody does, but some people do. So we made half a batch with a couple of raisins in it and the other batch without it. And then of
there's
course,
the Moorish influence again, Maria.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So it is. It's a beautiful dessert. It's a beautiful dessert. I loved it. And of course, a lot of people where we'd go to different restaurants in Terceira, of course, they'd go, oh, we have the Dona Amélia tart. So they'd make, instead of doing all of the different cupcakes, they would do a tart. So you'd have that. That came up a lot while we were there. But it was wonderful to make those two dishes, especially because to me, that is theirs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
As well as learning more about why bulls are so important to that island and the history of that, of the bulls, and how for, some time, the Portuguese, the Spaniards had taken over Spain. I mean, the Spaniards had taken over Portugal and had taken up the majority of all the other islands, had given in, going, oh, okay, fine. But the only island who, for several years, was just Portugal and part of Portugal was Terceira. And because they fought off the Spaniards with their bulls, this woman had an idea when they were coming in, because there were more of the Spaniards than they were of people on the island. And she suggested, we have all these bulls. Let's let the bulls go and see what happens. So they let the bulls go, and they went towards the Spaniards and stampede over them. And the Spaniards turned around and left and said, these people are we can't fight bulls. So, and they left for a couple of years until they came back with more people and they overtook it. But for a couple of years, it was the stronghold of Portugal. It was Terceira. These are strong people. Strong, tough people.
How ironic it is that they fought them off with what is the symbol of Spain, the bull. You go to Spain, everything is about the bull, yet it was the bulls that got the Spanish off of this island. That's incredible.
How ironic is that, isn't it? Yes. Yes, the irony of it. Yeah. But that's how they did it. So there's a lot of people being very proud that, of what happened there and in the history of it. It is wonderful. It's a wonderful episode. It's a wonderful episode.
Maria, before I let you go, there's one thing that I did want to bring up from this episode because it really rung true with me. I talk about this on the podcast all the time, that what I say is food is culture, culture is food, just as much as art or politics or agriculture, anything that you think of, music, dance, anything that you think of that's part of culture, food is an integral part of culture as well. And you had a quote in this episode that I want to read back to you. You said, if you want to learn about culture, try the food.
Yeah.
And this was just something that as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh man, that is so perfect. That's the perfect way to put it.
Our culture is ingrained in our food, and in our history is in our food. And most of all our dishes and that we have can be put in with history of us, of who we are as our, yes, it just is. It just is. And so it's almost something when anyone visits any of the islands, or they get to visit the islands, or they go to the mainland, or they go wherever you go, it's the food. You've got to just go where locals go. You've got to go where, off the beaten path. Because sometimes, certain restaurants, they kind of, move it so that it appeals to those that, wouldn't want this or that. So they tweak it a little. And I don't want to do that. I want it to stay as true as possible as it can. And we've got to keep that. We've got to keep that going. We have to keep that going. And that's with our art. That's with our culture. That's with ceramics. That's with, fill in the blank, our people who knitted and made, or through looming made these beautiful blankets or whatever it is. And all of these things that are just incredible. There was one place, for example, in Terceira that I went to, and that was Quinta do Martel. And I had never heard about it before. And that is the honest to goodness truth. And I heard about it from someone, and I went, okay, let me take a look at this. And this is, you talk about filming and doing something, and you go in and I have something in mind. This is how I like to do things. I don't like to go in and say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to see. This is what we're going to say. And we're out of there. That's not the way it goes. Because when you go in, it almost has to, what you want to do. Like you have an idea of, I want to make sure I show food, I show culture, I show history, I show, whether it's music or this, something's got to be, I've got to hit all those parts. But it also kind of reveals itself to me. It's almost like the island or wherever I am goes, you need to show this. And I follow it. It's something that I can't explain. It just is. And that happened with us in the first season. Like we knew what we wanted to do, but at the end, yes, we hit those things, but it was even more. And it was the same thing in Terceira. And as well as all the other islands too. There was something really special and magical that happened in Azores, but that's a whole other story. But in Terceira, the Quinta do Martel is this gentleman who, for the past 20 some years, or maybe more, it might be in 30 years, has been recreating, almost like Williamsburg, Virginia, or Plymouth Plantation, or what do you call it? He has recreated how the homes were for our ancestors, how houses were built when they first got there, how it looked after, what they grew in agriculture, how they were able to, pottery and what do you call it? Ironworks and this, and just like all of that stuff. He has it there. He has it there. And I felt like I had gone back in time. And I got to see what my ancestors would have gone through when those islands were inhabited 500 years ago. It was so special. And I said to him, I said, why don't I know about this place? Why don't we know more about this place? Because if you want to know how it all began and the suffering that they went through and all of the turmoil and you had pirates coming in all the time trying to take over what you've grown and all, I mean, it is something where and he has it there. It's like living history. So if anyone is going to Terceira anytime soon, of all the places, the things that I talked about, you need to see Quinta do Martel, which is the Quinta of the hammer, the Martel. And it is a place where people need to know more about it, because you see our humble beginnings, our very humble beginnings, and the suffering that they went through. And then you look at it and you go, oh my God, we all stand on our ancestors' shoulders. We all do, because we all come from somewhere else. And why we are where you are is because of them, no matter how far back. And we cannot forget that. We have to honor that.
Well, Maria, I think that's the perfect way to end this episode. That's a nice bow on this whole thing about the Azores and about Portugal in general. And I just want to thank you for being on the podcast. And I want to thank you for your show, Maria's Portuguese Table, because sharing the culture and the food of Portugal is just such an important thing, and it's so fascinating to me. I love listening to your stories. I could listen to you all day talk about these wonderful stories about Portugal and about the folks who have lived in Portugal and some of them who have migrated to other places. So thanks again for being on the show. It's been great to catch up with you.
Thank you again. Always a pleasure, hon. Always a pleasure.
Okay, there you go. Maria is so passionate about the Azores and Portuguese cuisine. It's so inspiring. You can keep up with Maria on her website, azoreangreenbean.com. I've also got a link to Maria's website in the show notes. Get that at destinationeatdrink.com/DED 8237. And be sure to check your local listings for when Maria's Portuguese Table airs on your PBS station. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we are in Chicago to dine El Trunco and get in a fight with your father. Don't want to miss that one. While you're waiting for that, get over to DestinationEatDrink.com. You can sign up for the Destination Eat Drink newsletter and read the story I just posted about an abandoned winery near Lisbon. It's an amazing place we kind of stumbled upon on our last outing near Lisbon. Read about that at destinationeatdrink.com/abandoned-winery. I just posted a food and wine crawl in the town of Évora, Portugal as well. You can watch that video by going to destinationeatdrink.com and clicking on the video tab, or go to YouTube and look up my channel. It's at Destination Eat Drink 946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thanks, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.